Okay, continuing on with our series on assessing yourself, others, the context, and the social factors at play in a negotiation, all with the objective of establishing a strategic plan. Now, we've talked to you about a strategic plan being made up of your strategic orientation, your objectives in the negotiation, and then the tactics you use to pursue those objectives, all in concert with the orientation that you're employing. Okay. Now, with that being said, before you can sit down and begin to plan out these various aspects of a negotiation, you must understand or have a basic level of knowledge about critical aspects of the negotiation. Number one, being yourself. And in a separate video, we talked about assessing yourself as part of developing a negotiation strategy. Now we'll talk to you about assessing the other party in the negotiation, your counterparty in the negotiation. So, with that being said, the first thing you're going to identify are the interests or objectives of the other party. What do they want? What are things that could affect them? What are things that are of value to them to gain or not lose, right? That type of thing. So to the extent you can understand what they care about, right? And to the extent they care about it, then again, you have critical information you need in the negotiation. Next, you need to understand their alternatives. To the extent possible, if you can identify what alternatives they have if they are not able to work out a negotiated agreement with you. What are their other options to come to some sort of resolution of whatever they need, whatever reason they're in the negotiation? Okay, a substitute product, another service, a different interest, that type of thing. So to the extent you can identify alternatives, that is probably the single most important thing to know in terms of identifying what is their resistance point, meaning at what point will they walk away from the negotiation? At what point will they say, okay, one of my alternatives is a better option. I'm going to go with that instead. Okay, and normally the resistance point is made up of a combination of those interests and objectives and the alternatives, right? So no alternative is going to be exactly the same. So there will be some aspects of the interests at stake, even if it's not the interest you're negotiating over, right? It's just some secondary interest that's going to influence the extent to which they value something, and it will affect at what point they are willing to walk away and pursue that secondary interest. So now you're probably saying, well, this is very difficult to determine. How could you determine this in a negotiation? Well, I oftentimes tell people that negotiation is an art form, but it is a communication exercise. Okay? It is a back and forth exchange of information through direct and indirect sources, right? So ultimately, you can use that information to, in some way, affect the other party or the context of the situation so that you can ultimately achieve whatever superior outcome or goal that you're looking for. Okay? And that's why strategy is made up of tactics that achieve smaller objectives, and these smaller objectives come together, right? They influence the other person or the situation in a way that allows you to achieve your overall outcome or goals. So if you look at it like that, it's easy to see that, okay, this is an exercise. It's going to take the use of a lot of information if we're going to come up with a plan that allows you to do that, right? So to start with, you're going to have to do some research, all right? Indirect research is any information you can find outside, from third parties, from reading on the subject, from becoming knowledgeable about the industry or background of whatever it is you're negotiating over. And then direct research is a little bit more focused on the counterparty or the immediate situation at hand, right? And that's you undertaking the effort to find out the information. Oftentimes that's done through a tactic called perspective taking, meaning you simply ask questions. You hear them out on their side to gain information. Other times it's done through just a random conversation, right? Just being communicative with the other side. Sometimes it's done through just simply observing the other side directly and how they act, what you believe their disposition is, how they answer questions, how they make concessions based upon what you offer, and then they return back with some counter and make concessions on where they opened up or their prior position. All of these things will tell you things about the other side's position. So you can't know many times for certain, right, exactly their position, the interests that they care about most, or their objectives with regard to any interests, the alternatives that they have, options that they have for, if this negotiation doesn't work out. But to the extent you can research this and find out, that is what you are doing when you assess the other party. So much of that assessment takes place before the negotiation as well as during the negotiation, and comes in the form of both indirect and direct types of research.